Hey, how's it going, guys? A little something different this time. So, ultimately, if you've been watching the channel long enough, you know that, well, I like comic books. It's a hobby that I very much enjoy and has spilled out onto the channel as I have talked multiple times about comic book movies. If you've been on my social media, wink wink, um, pretty much I have made it no secret. I love comic book stuff, superheroes, that type of ordeal. It's something that I've been passionate about for a long time, and while I'm no expert, it's still something that I like doing. And again, it's something that I personally am a big fan of. And again, you've seen it on my channel. I mean, from the comic book movie reviews to me talking about, all that stuff, and even complaining right now about the Zeb Wells run. Um, yeah, hilarious to see that video now. Hasn't exactly poorly aged. If anything, things have gotten worse. But that's besides that. What I'm here today is to talk about GQ. Everybody knows this company. Everybody has heard about it. You know it. You know either from the magazines or their YouTube channel. They are very famous. So because of this, it is very interesting how in one of their latest episodes, I am looking at it right now, it was posted a day ago, that they just flat out had a lot of misinformation or potential misinformation when it comes to effectively the comic book collecting scene. Now, I am nowhere near in this space. I am going off of the research, but even as somebody who is not really a big person in that collecting sphere, especially the more expensive stuff, even I was a little bit thrown off by some of the stuff that was in this episode, effectively. And again, even though I didn't really know the numbers, just going off of some of the stuff that I have seen either in the past, as well just the sheer fact that some of the stuff that they highlighted, I feel like either was too under or maybe not enough. So let's get right into it.
This book is about $300,000, $350,000. I mean, it's just got one of the greatest covers of all time. Most people...
He effectively says that Amazing Fantasy number 15 would catch around like $300 to $350,000. When I watched this, I was a bit skeptical because I remember a long time ago, I can't remember where I heard this information. Well, effectively, they kind of made it and very implied that Amazing Fantasy number 15 would probably catch around in very good condition. It would catch around $1 million. So I looked at Comic Price Guide. The website is Quality Comics. That's where I'm getting most of these numbers from. So when we look at the website and look at what it says the value of Amazing Fantasy number 15 in mint condition is well over $1 million in 2023. Now, the thing is, he may be going off the grade of the book, which is fine, because even on this website, it gives some of the grading numbers that you can look at that would give you essentially the price. Like if you came in, slap down your graded comic on the table, and then ask for some money, they would look at it and go off of that. So when you look at the actual grade in the video, it actually shows a 7.0. So that's his grade. If you look on the website, and if you're looking around, now it says on here, it says FN 6.0. So roughly, if we look around that area, he ain't getting that amount of money. His $300,000 or $350,000, that is way over his actual grade. So, like I said, I feel like that is very weird how he is overselling his actual grade. Now, if he's not going off the grade, that's even weirder, because near mint, if we're talking like good condition, if we're just going off of good condition by itself, near mint, 9.4 the grade, $705,000. It's way over what he said. And if we are just going off of Amazing Fantasy number 15 by itself without a grade, if we're not going off of grading, again, as I just mentioned earlier, it's $1 million. That's the total value. I don't know where he is getting these numbers from. And from what I have seen in the description, and it doesn't say anything in the video, I don't know where he's getting these prices from. They don't cite their source, to my knowledge. I looked in the video. There seems to be no source as to where they're getting these price points from. He's just saying that, oh, it's $300,000 or $350,000 when that's not really true. I just looked at one, and I've seen other ones that fluctuate, that seem to be either under or over. So it's very clear the $300,000 to $350,000 price tag. Yeah, that ain't it, Chief.
Character's appearance, including this one here, Captain America, #1.
Let me see.
Now, and then again, we get to the Captain America comic. If you look at the grade, it is 3.5. 3.5. Keep that in mind.
How much?
How much is this one? This is about $400,000.
Man.
Okay, so he says $400,000 for Captain America #1. One of the most iconic issues. Now, the reason why I am bringing this up, despite the fact that I said that I am not really into the comic sphere like that with expensive comics, the reason why I am bringing this up and why I'm talking about it is because even though I had to do research, even I was a little bit confused, and I was a little bit I was very skeptical on a lot of these prices, because when you look at the actual comics that he is bringing in, I really feel like these are going to be far more expensive. Maybe a while back it was, but definitely not now, especially in a post MCU world. You have to remember, kid, this is Captain America. The first appearance of him, and also one of the most iconic images in comic book history, Captain America punching Hitler. It's so world famous. Even before the MCU, you knew the cover. So it feels weird how it is being kind of undersold, because if you look at the actual value, okay, what was his grade again? Let's remember, it was a 3.5. Yeah. So if we look around the 2.0 to 4.0 range, dude, it is undersold. But again, if we're not going off of the grade, what is it worth in 2023 just by itself? Well, Captain America in mint condition would sell for at least $2 million. That's insane. And again, this is a series called Most Expensivest, and yet they are underselling how expensive this actually is. This is very underselling. And again, if we're going off of grading, his grading is not going to get him a lot of money. A 3.5 is not going to get you a lot. That means that it's probably very damaged, or not, or very old, or has withered a bit. That isn't going to fit you millions of dollars, or even the 400,000. I'm pretty sure the average person, the average collector, probably isn't going to pay that much. Now, maybe he paid that much, but I don't think that's a good basis to go off of. I could easily say, oh, well, I spent, I have a Marvel Legends figure that unfortunately I had to buy secondhand off of eBay. I paid $60 for it. I could easily say, oh, well, the Marvel Legends Walmart exclusive, 90s animated series Spider-Man, that's, that's worth $60. When realistically, it could be either less or more. Paying is not exactly the value, because you may have got scammed. This guy could have gotten scammed with the actual value that it is worth. I don't know, because again, they don't cite their source. I'm citing my source. You can check out the website. You could easily tell me if it's believable or not. But judging by this company putting grades and everything, and they're the first one that shows up, it's clearly telling me a different story than what he is. Now, the big thing I do want to mention is he is a former comic CEO. He used to be the CEO of Valiant Comics. He no longer is. Keep that in mind for later. So while I want to believe that he is truthful in what he's saying, I don't know because, like I said, he's not affiliated, to my knowledge, with Marvel and DC. It was never cited as that. He is only known for Valiant Comics. I ultimately wonder what is his basis for these prices, because I feel like you're very much underselling these. Because if somebody did own these and then they had it like in their attic or in their, as Two Chainz said himself later in the episode, or again, or if they bought it, then I feel like they might end up underselling it. You could end up costing people what could be more, especially if they do have a near mint condition. Because a near mint condition, Captain America #1, a 9.4 that it says on this website, goes for $915,000. That's currently what we are seeing in 2023. And this video is not old. It just came out a day ago. So it is the current year version of what the prices are. So that's the price you would get. Imagine if you watched this episode and didn't do any research, but were going off of what GQ did, then you're getting scammed potentially out of a lot of money, out of potentially $2 million, or again 900,000. And when you're thinking, oh well, he said that it was 400,000, and the reason why I'm talking about this is because, again, I did the research, but even as somebody who's a normie from that world, I ultimately was very skeptical about these prices. I figured there's no way that they are that low on pricing or their value, especially again in a post MCU world where Captain America is now on par with Spider-Man or is becoming, just as popular. Hell, Captain America was already popular even pre-MCU because he's literally a symbol of America. He's a symbol of patriotism. So I hardly think he would be that less, especially now with him having a film series, a very popular and well received and money making film series. And I'm not trying to sit here and be like, ha, look at this idiot, kind of deal. I'm more or less talking about it because I don't think that somebody as big, or I shouldn't even say somebody, a big corporation as GQ should not be spreading this kind of misinformation, especially when you're going to talk about the most expensivest. Yeah, it is expensive, but you undersold how expensive it is. It's actually more. And again, you could potentially end up spreading misinformation to people who may have these comics or want to get invested in these comic book collecting world. They may end up thinking, oh, well, that's not enough, or it's like, oh, well, that's the amount. I guess that's the average, unless it's like a Batman or something, spoiler for later. But there is one price that he gets right. But again, most of that kind of gets muddled in some of the grading. So again, I'm not trying to sit here and be mean and trying to really, like say that, that it's useless and, this guy's an idiot. No, there's a good chance that maybe he just screwed up on the pricing. Maybe he's not too knowledgeable, because there is something at the end that makes me think maybe he's fairly new to this. I don't know, because even though he is a former comic book CEO, he was a CEO for an independent publisher. That may not reflect their pricing, or their value may not reflect somebody like Marvel or DC or any of that kind of stuff. So here's part of the video that now some of the pricing can be debatable. It depends on your sources. Here's where we get into misinformation that is a lot more objective in its analysis, as we call it.
So Stan Lee was running Marvel, and it wasn't doing well because they weren't superheroes yet. They were about to go to business, and his wife said to him, just tell one story the way you want. Forget what you think they want. And he wrote this story, Amazing Fantasy 15, First Appearance of Spider-Man, with a morality tale. And it blew up. And then immediately after this, Spider-Man #1 comes out, and Fantastic Four, X-Men, Daredevil changes the world.
You just heard how he gave a story about, Stan Lee, how he created Spider-Man, and the rest followed through. The problem is his story has a lot of problems, and if anything, it feels like an amalgamation of several decades worth of actual stories, as well stories that get contradicted not by, hearsay or he said, she said by literally Stan Lee himself, as he has said it from his actual lips to interviewers' ears. And there's several different interviews that you can find on Fantastic Four, Daredevil, X-Men, and Spider-Man. All those different ones, they all tell a different story, especially the ones that we are going to be looking at with Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four.
While I was working for Marvel, the first 20 years or so, I was just doing regular comics. Then, after a while, I really wanted to quit because I felt while Martin Goodman was a great guy and a good publisher, I didn't like really what he wanted me to do. He felt comics were just for young kids or stupid adults. And he used to say to me, "Remember, Stan, don't use words of more than 2 syllables. Don't have too much dialogue. Get a lot of action. Don't worry about characterization." And that was fine. I was doing it, and the books were doing well, and I had a steady job, but it wasn't satisfying. Because I really think of myself as a reasonably good writer. I like to write. So I really wanted to quit and try something else. And I remember Joan said to me, "You know, Stan, if you want to quit, before you do, why don't you do one book the way you would like to do it? The worst that happens is Martin will fire you, and so what? You want to quit anyway." So coincidentally, at that time, he had found out that our competitor, DC Comics, which called itself National Comics in those days, they had done a book called The Justice League of America, a group of superheroes, and it was selling very well. And he said to me, "Stan, why don't you do a book about a group of superheroes?" So I figured this is my chance to do it my way. So I came up with something I called the Fantastic Four, about 4 superheroes. But
So he says that Stan Lee was running Marvel. He wasn't. He wasn't the head of Marvel. In fact, Stan Lee wouldn't pretty much become the head of Marvel until 1972. And this was still in the 60s. This was before Stan Lee became, the Stan the man, the way we think of him, the man, the myth, the legend himself. So he was just working at Marvel, as he says in this story. And again, that is a huge, huge thing to get wrong. I mean, again, to say that was the story of Spider-Man, no, that's wrong. That was the creation of the Fantastic Four as well. The Fantastic Four came before Spider-Man. Yes, he does get right on the other heroes that came after Spider-Man, but no, Spider-Man was not first. Fantastic Four already existed because, again, not only the year that they were created, but again, literally, he even mentions how, Spider-Man would get his #1 issue later. Guess who is in that #1 issue? Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four are in that first issue because they were already established. So if they weren't created, how did that happen? But again, we know it didn't because, well, the way he says it, that's wrong. And I wonder, why did they make it like this? Because they also say that Marvel was going bankrupt and everything, like they were going to go out of business. In my research that I looked, I didn't see anything about them going bankrupt. Do you know where the bankruptcy story comes from? It comes from the 90s. The speculator market, the whole, like we all know the story. Marvel then, gave into the speculator market. Collectors were like, well, if I buy 5 issues of #1 of this comic, then I'll be able to graduate college in a few years. Or put my kids through college. And of course, Marvel kept printing more. The comic book industry damn near imploded on itself. And Marvel was about to go bankrupt. They sold a bunch of their properties. Bada bing, bada boom. Spider-Man becomes a film franchise, and then the birth of the MCU comes later, and a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo rights that they're still dealing with to this day. We know that story. We know what goes on there. So again, the idea that they're saying that they were going to go bankrupt or almost go out of business, again, we associate that with the 90s. In my research, there was nothing that said that they were about to shut down or anything, let alone the fact that Stan Lee was the head of Marvel. Another weird thing, too, that he mentions is the fact that, there were no superheroes. I don't know if this was him misspeaking or anything, but yeah, there weren't superhero comics during that time because after World War II, superheroes kind of fell out of favor before, then like DC and Marvel started revamping their old superheroes and became the giants that we know today. They still existed. Like he holds old issues, he holds the Captain America and he holds the Marvel Comics title later. Keep that in mind for later because oh boy, there's a huge uh big pile of information there that was kind of shocking to hear. So you have all that, but again, the superheroes did become passe and didn't exactly weren't as common back then. But the way he said it, like there were no capes or anything, there were no superheroes before. Dude, you literally just held up Captain America #1. Now again, he may just be misspeaking, or maybe the way he said it probably wasn't the most accurate. I would understand if that's the case, but if he is trying to imply that like superheroes weren't really around, yeah, Batman, Superman, Captain America, Namor, Human Torch, they existed. Again, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt that that was just a weird way of saying it, but I'm just covering this base just in case that's what he meant. Because if not, oh boy, that's just wrong. Oh.
Book, Marvel Comics #1, which is often considered the first Marvel book, back when they were called Timely Comics, that book named the company, is the first appearance of the Human Torch, the guy that gets on fire from Fantastic Four, and for...
Okay. 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 This was the part that, when I saw the other day, I was sitting there eating my tacos, enjoying my lunch. It got to that portion, and I let out the most audible no that there was. Oh man, this is the thing that really made me want to cover this video along with the Spider-Man stuff. That is wrong. I'm sorry, but that is the wrong Human Torch. The Human Torch that is on Marvel Comics #1 is the Human Torch. Yes. But he says it's the Fantastic Four one. No. Fantastic Four's Human Torch and that Human Torch are not the same character. Fantastic Four is Johnny Storm, who is a completely different character. Similar fire powers, but a completely different character. The one on the cover of Marvel Comics #1 is Jim Hammond. He is an android who can then set himself on fire. A very, very stark contrast. Also, he's not really technically a part of a team. The only thing close to a team up that happened was when they got their 3 heroes together that represented Marvel during that time, of when Captain America, Namor the Submariner, and the Human Torch met together. But even then, he wasn't really a part of a team the way Johnny is. So again, that is nowhere near the same thing, and I do not know how he managed to get that wrong. I understand that like most people outside the Marvel sphere won't get that information, that's fine. But this guy is a former CEO of a comic company. I would really want him to be able to get information right. And again, I'm not trying to be mean to the guy. I'm simply just stating that I really think that this is something that you shouldn't get wrong, because again, you are essentially then on a public platform like GQ spreading huge misinformation, because then people who maybe don't know are going to watch this video and be like, ah, yeah, that's Human Torch, the guy from the Fantastic Four. And it's like a Marvel fan who's like knowledgeable about every single thing to every fiber of Wolverine's costume. He'll be able to tell you, well, no, that's Jim Hammond. He's a completely different Human Torch. He predates the Fantastic Four. He even predates Captain America. He's one of the originals. So again, it's this misinformation that's out there. I don't think is good for a huge company like GQ. While it's nowhere near on the level as bad as something like The Verge's like PC build, I still feel like it needs to be talked about, because this is misinformation that could inform people in the worst way possible. It's not good information, it's misinformation. Now a lot of the other portions of the video are completely fine. I didn't really see anything there, and I'm only just really talking about that and the pricing, the very questionable prices. I still feel that it is very much on GQ to correct potentially any of their guests, because during this entire video there is no addendums or annotations or anything that comes in to say, oh, well, actually, this is the way it was, or that's not how it went, or this is, technically wrong. We're sorry. There's nothing even in the description. I look in the description, there's nothing that says any potential, like, oh, we got this wrong, we're sorry kind of deal, or any like, oh, by the way, we kind of maybe got some information wrong. No, there's nothing in the actual video that says that, oh, we were incorrect or our guest was incorrect. So this is misinformation that I really feel like went unchecked, and I do not feel comfortable with GQ not doing that, essentially, especially on a video that says most expensivest. If you're going to inform people and talk about a subject, I would hope that you would have enough people to do some basic research, because again, this is not obscure information. This is most stuff that you can find with a quick Google search. I did. Most of this stuff I already knew, but as well, you can find this through, just typing. Go to your computer, go to your keyboard, and then look up the Human Torch, and you'll get a bunch of information. And then you probably will find and see, oh, so there's Jim Hammond, and then there's Johnny Storm. Whoa, I can't believe it. There's two of them. This is getting out of hand. There's two of them now. So, again, I am not trying to be, like, harsh on this guy, but it's just something that baffles me how he, they very much introduce him as this huge guy that loves comic books and loves, collecting stuff, but most of his information is starting to very much be, well, wrong, essentially. And again, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, I'm the better one, look at me, I'm smart. I just want information to be presented correctly, especially a hobby that I like, especially a subject that I am passionate about, and something that he claims to be passionate about. I'm not saying he's a fake fan. He may very much well be, and he very much may have just accidentally, slip of the brain. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that day he just forgot, or he, got information wrong. He may have, even on the drive home, or, like a day later, may have been like, oh shit, I got that wrong, didn't I? Oh no. But again, that's completely fine on his part. That's a completely human error. I understand. I've gotten shit wrong in my videos. I've gotten shit wrong on Twitter. I've gotten shit wrong in my life. I've accidentally spread misinformation. I usually try to correct it. But, again, it's a completely human error. I understand. But when you have a company like GQ, a huge multi-million-dollar company, I feel like it is their responsibility to potentially fact check any of this stuff, especially when you're going to be almost in many ways advertising this hobby to a bunch of people, especially to your host of your series. Because again, he's sitting there like, wow, that's crazy, man. God, I can't believe they're spending this amount of money, or like it's worth that much. Yeah, and what he's putting out is a lot. But your host would actually be more impressed if you said here, like, oh yeah, mint condition Amazing Fantasy number 15, yeah, $1 million. Oh, the Captain America number 1, $2 million. I think it would be even more impressed to hear that, like 3 of the comics that they showed is worth about $3 million altogether. Oh my god, that was a voice crack right there. Holy shit.
This is probably the most expensive comic book I brought today. This is like Amazing Fantasy 15. This is not Batman's own title, but it's the first appearance of Batman, Detective Comics 27 from 1939.
That's crazy.
This
The
is...
first appearance of Batman.
And that is an easy $1 million.
Amazing. Really, bro?
So the next comic that he shows is well, the first appearance of Batman. Now, I don't know why they didn't show the first appearance of Superman. It seems like there's clear implication that this is his private collection, so if that's what it is, if that's just his private collection, then that's completely fine. If he doesn't own it, that's okay, that's completely fine. But he says it's about $1 million, which actually, doing the research, I found was actually right. Maybe a few years back, probably would have been true. Not now. Now, granted, on this one, they say it's predominantly near mint because of how old this one is. So there's a good chance that finding a near mint condition or finding an actual mint condition copy is pretty much borderline impossible since this thing came out so long ago. So again, that's completely understandable. But they even say but they show on their website a near mint condition, a 9.4, will fetch you $3 million. $3,500,000. That is a lot of money. And he said it was about a million, or close to over a million. Yeah, close to. That's a lot over a million. Now, his grade, let's look back, is 2.5. Again, if you look at the 2.5 rating on the website that I am using in 2023, will run you about $175,000. That is not a lot of money compared to what he was saying in general. So again, he is in a weird middle ground where it is both under and over what his grade would be. Because again, even if we remove the grades, if you don't care about grading, which is understandable, because from what I have heard from from specific videos, I've heard grading can be kind of a scam, or some of them can be very weird with their tactics. I don't know about the comic book company, but I know for the video game industry that's right now going, a lot of the grading stuff is getting very sus, and very fishy with some of the grading stuff. But there's videos that you can find about that, and Red Letter Media's video about the VHS craze right now of the grading for that one is a bit weird on some of them. So again, if you don't care about grading and just going off of good condition comic itself, it's not selling as much as he would want if it's not good condition, and if it is good condition, it probably isn't what it's going to be. Again, this is $3 million for a near mint condition. That is a lot. Now there's your most expensivest. And again, I don't understand where they're getting their sources from. They didn't cite any sources in this video. They didn't say comic price guide like I said, Quality Comics, that's the website. I will even have it linked in the description if you want to take a look at some of the prices they have. But again, no sources are cited. There's nothing in the description. There's no addendums. There's no anything of the actual grading. It's just come in, say a bunch of stuff, and then believe it, I guess. And again, I don't want to make it seem like this guy is lying. I don't think he's lying. If anything, at best, I think he's just maybe misinformed or potentially new. Because then there's this part of the video.
I feel okay about that. I made my money in comics. I lived the American dream. I ran my favorite company of all time, the characters I loved. I built it up. I made it amazing. We got a movie made. Then they fired me. That's the American dream. It gave me a lot of money. It was called Valiant Comics. I have a Valiant-shaped hole in my heart, and I try to fill it with all the stuff I loved as a kid.
So he says that portion, which I feel bad for the guy. I do feel bad. It sounds like he very much loved working at Valiant, and now he's no longer. If you're not familiar with Valiant, if you're not familiar with that, they have made a lot of famous comics, a lot of famous independent comics. When you think of independent comics, you think of Image Comics, but then the other one you think of is Valiant. They are just as famous, if not also in that sphere. So that's completely understandable. And again, I feel sorry for the guy, especially because the movie he's referencing is most likely the Bloodshot movie, that one with Vin Diesel that came out during COVID, sounds like it's been kind of hard. And he even says in the video he's filling this Valiant shaped hole in his heart with these comic books. So it sounds like he may have just started recently, and that's why maybe some of the information is maybe incorrect. Maybe because he was working at Valiant, he wasn't able to do maybe a lot of that stuff. Maybe he did, but because that was a long time ago, or maybe he just started. Again, I am not trying to make this guy look like he's, trying to scam people, or he's a liar, or or he's an idiot. I don't think he's any of those things. I just think he is maybe new, and this misinformation is ultimately just coming from somebody maybe barely getting restarted in that area. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he is an expert. And if so, again, that is weird how most of this misinformation is just being allowed in this very big public video, because that's the thing I want to stress. This is a public still up video by one of the biggest companies that's out there in America, GQ. That is a huge, huge company to then go on a video and just misrepresent potential prices to collectors or up and coming collectors, as well misrepresent stories of Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. Because again, though that story especially, Stan Lee has told a million times. He said it. You can find 5 different interviews of Stan Lee talking about how he created Spider-Man. In fact, I'm gonna tell it to you. Spider-Man was created because Stan Lee, he wanted a new superhero, and so he wanted an insect themed hero, and he went off through a bunch of lists of insects, saying, how he was like, oh, Flyman, nah, this guy. And then he got to Spider-Man, and he loved it so much, but the people in charge at Marvel, not him, didn't like it. They said, dude, what are you doing? Teenagers can't be superheroes, they're sidekicks. Also, you're going to make him based on a spider? What are you doing? People hate spiders. It's going to be a complete travesty. It ain't going to make money. So then they had Amazing Fantasy number 15, which was about to be its last comic because they didn't need Amazing Fantasy 15 anymore. They didn't need Amazing Fantasy anymore. So they ultimately said, all right, we'll just put your character in that last comic. It'll close out. If it makes money, oh well. So then it sells like gangbusters. And then suddenly Stan says that the same guy who rejected his idea is like, hey Stan, you know that spider guy that we really loved your idea on? We want more of that. And it's a story that Stan has told so much, and I have watched so many times I can recite it from memory. That was me not doing every single little detail. So again, it's a story that is very well known, and a story that I love hearing as a Spider-Man fan, and yet he is trying to make it seem like that the story of the Fantastic Four is the story of Spider-Man, and that Spider-Man then started everything. Which, yes, the characters that he said that came after were right, but the one that he was the most wrong on was the Fantastic Four. They predate him. I love Spider-Man, but let's get basic facts right? So ultimately, I just wanted to talk about this. That's the end of the video. A lot of the other information in there I didn't really talk about because it was either actually correct or it really wasn't anything worth kind of deal, because like I said, I didn't find any holes. If anything, I would say the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle section of the video I feel like was kind of undersold. How important Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is as a comic book, especially for indie comics. That one especially I feel like was kind of a missed opportunity, especially since you have a former CEO of an independent comic book publisher. I really feel like you should have stressed a lot more on the importance for TMNT, because despite the goofy name, and I know there's going to be some people rolling their eyes like, oh, they're not that important. They actually are for independent comics, and even their movie is very important for independent films, independent comic book films too. So again, yeah, I feel like that's the only other thing I would criticize, but the thing I wanted to ultimately talk about is the very weird pricing that they do without any sources on where they got it from, and then the blatant misinformation on on a very iconic character, a very important character, both of them, as well a weird chimera of stories put together to weave this narrative. And again, I don't know if it was him who got it all wrong, if he just had like a bunch of stories that ended up combining into one, if it was just a case of misremembering, or if GQ, or maybe GQ is at fault. Maybe they wanted to spin this narrative, around it when it's wrong, kind of deal. I don't know. I don't even want to say that GQ did that because they didn't put any, like, oh, this is wrong or anything. So I don't think there's an agenda, but maybe it could have just been a case of we got to make it more juicy. I don't know. I don't even think it's that. I think it's just a case of, accidentally being like, oh, that story is just wrong. But again, I don't know. It's weird, and I wanted to talk about it because I don't like this kind of misinformation being out there on such a huge YouTube channel. Like, this is, it's one thing for a small channeled YouTuber to get like information wrong, but it's another when it's a big corporation, a big company like GQ. So that's the end of the video. A little something different, like I said, it's been a while since the last one, but I wanted to talk about this because, oh man, that's yeah, they did an oopsie. This video was not good. And it sucks because I was actually very excited to watch this. I was very much looking forward to it. So, yeah, here's to hoping that maybe next time they'll do. I know there's one about Pokemon cards and baseball. I'm not gonna watch that one because I don't know any of those. But yeah, you never know. Maybe somebody can talk about it. You never know. I would love to see Max Mofo talk about it. He's into the whole Pokemon thing, so maybe he could dispel any potential misinformation if they did it in there too. So I don't know. So, but anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.